Good morning, everyone. I think we're live. Thank you very much for being here this morning, and you're all very, very welcome. My name is Jeanne Mcdonough, and I'm the CEO of the Open Doors Initiative. Just to give you a short description of myself, I'm wearing a green dress, I have glasses, I have blondie, reddy, curly hair, and I'll be your host for this morning. So thank you again for joining us. Just to give you an idea of what the work of Open Doors Initiative and Towards Work is, just to put in context, work gives you stability, access to housing, education and health, and it ingrains you in the wider community. One of the first questions people are often asked is, where do you work? So at the Open Doors Initiative, we're a collective of over 100 organisations, that's companies and NGOs, who work with government to create pathways to education and employment for marginalised people. The people we work with include refugees, asylum seekers and migrants, people with disabilities and disadvantaged youth, including those from a traveller background, LGBTQI+, ex-offenders, and any intersectionality between the groups. So basically, anyone who needs our help, we're there for you. Many are cut out of work, even during recent times of full employment pre-COVID. Only 36.5% of people with disabilities were in employment pre-COVID. 1 in 8, if not more, of the population are from a migrant background, yet many have difficulties securing work due to permits, language, bias barriers, and other reasons. An early school leaver is twice as likely to be unemployed as their peers. And shockingly, in the traveller community, there is over 80% unemployment. At the Open Doors Initiative, we take a very holistic and equitable view. The people we help into work and education are there on merit. It is not tokenism. They're there because they have the skills to do the work and get career progression. Sometimes they just need help overcoming the barriers to an equitable situation. To talk a little bit about Towards Work, it exists to support any person with a disability on their journey towards employment, self-employment, or further education. It provides free practical training, resources, and a bespoke mentorship program. And we try to educate and empower participants on the next steps towards their goal. We have really great speakers today that I'm very excited, who will have lived experience and professional experience in helping people towards self-employment and entrepreneurship. We're holding this seminar today to celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week by highlighting the need for more diverse entrepreneurs. Self-employment and entrepreneurship are a very viable pathway for members of marginalised communities, and it plays to their strengths, that of resilience and overcoming barriers. We're also funding TU Dublin's module on self-employment for people with disabilities, and we're going to show a short video about that work now. And Professor Tom Cooney, who's very kindly agreed to moderate our panel, will say a few words about the work that's taking place. So you're all very welcome, and I look forward to a really good session. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Cooney, and I'm Professor of Entrepreneurship at TU Dublin. I'm also the leader of a new initiative, which is the delivery of an online training program on self-employment for people with disabilities. We know from statistics that the rate of employment for people with disabilities in Ireland is hugely disappointing, being the 4th lowest rate in European countries. And part of what we're looking to achieve here is to create momentum around the idea of people with disabilities starting up their own business. It goes through the basics of starting up your own business. It features content on generating ideas, evaluating them, and then understanding if they are viable on a long-term basis. We're not expecting everyone at the end of the course to start their own business, because that would be unrealistic. What we are expecting is that people with a business idea will have an opportunity in a supportive environment to evaluate their business idea and to determine whether it is for them or not.
Hello, my name is Niamh Malone, and this course has given me confidence and belief in what I'm doing. It opened doors for me. It's well structured and interesting speakers. It's a step-by-step guide each week on building my business. Tom is brilliant and is always on hand. We also get a mentor for guidance. It will change my life, and I'm launching in February 2022. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Margaret Corcoran. I was absolutely thrilled to hear about the course being offered at TU Dublin for people with disabilities. It's called a self-employment skills programme for people with disabilities. You know, if you have a variety of ideas tucked away there that you'd like to explore, it's perfect. From idea to business plan. You have the support of your mentors, your lecturers, the guys on the course. You have nuggets and nuggets of information be given to you each week by the guest speakers, which is fantastic. Both personally and professionally, you know that there's hope there. There's a desire there for me to overcome my inability to secure a job, you know, overcome my doubts about my disability, accommodation for people with disabilities in the workplace, you know, just exploring where your career is going, which is fantastic.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Cooney. I'm middle-aged, white male, balding, in need of running more 5Ks and more exercise, and dressed casually for today, all of which doesn't paint a very flattering picture of me, actually, but there you go. I am Professor of Entrepreneurship at TU Dublin, and in 2006 I established the Institute for Minority Entrepreneurship within what was then Dublin Institute of Technology and is now TU Dublin. So the Institute for Minority Entrepreneurship basically sought to maximize the economic and social potential of people from marginalised and disadvantaged communities. And over the past 15 years, we've worked with immigrants, people with disability, the traveller community, ex-offenders. We've also worked with seniors, with women, and with the LGBT plus community. I'm also the author for the Ireland reports for the OECD Missing Entrepreneurs reports, which come out every 2 years. And the OECD is an international organization that's hugely respected, and every 2 years writes these reports called the Missing Entrepreneurs. And they've identified missing entrepreneurs as women, people with disability, long-term unemployed, marginalized youth, immigrants, and seniors. And effectively, what the OECD are saying is that all of these communities have low levels of entrepreneurial activity in comparison, you know, to the general population. And yet there's huge potential there that we're not tapping into. And the reports track the levels of entrepreneurial activity, but more importantly, identify the main barriers that are faced by these communities and identify policy actions that could be taken by governments across Europe to rectify or address the challenges that people face. In 2010, February of last year, I co-authored a report on a pathway to entrepreneurship for people with disability. And it highlighted the challenges that people with disability in this country face. And also it highlighted the actions that could be taken to support people with disability into self-employment. What I have argued consistently is that people from marginalized and disadvantaged backgrounds have unique and additional challenges that the general population do not face when starting their own business. And unfortunately, I would argue, enterprise agencies might disagree with me on this, but I would argue that enterprise agencies generally will say, we treat everyone the same, or doors open to everyone. And my argument is, treating everyone the same is actually not the answer. And that the policy of our door is open to everyone only works if people know the door exists and if it is accessible to everyone equally. And in September of last year, in conjunction with Open Doors Initiative, we wrote a report on pathway to employment for marginalized communities, specifically looking at marginalized youth, people with disability, and immigrants. And that was published in September of last year. Earlier this year, I published a book on research handbook on minority entrepreneurship, and it featured top researchers from across the globe. So look, the point being, this is an area of deep interest for me for many years, in which I've both researched, written, but also provided training programs, for the different minority communities that we've been addressing. A little about the course that we are currently running, that has been funded by the Open Doors Initiative in conjunction with Public. And this came from my argument that we need to have a tailored program for people with disability, because the challenges that they face, as I said earlier, are distinctive, and therefore a tailored approach was needed. So in September of this year, we started a new online course. We had received funding for 20 places initially, and got more afterwards, but we're now at 20 participants. But we were oversubscribed with 38 participants. Now, interestingly, and it's something that I want to have a conversation with the panelists in a moment, but interestingly, when I went to the media looking for support in promoting this course to try and draw attention to it and encouraging people to apply, I got no response. The only interview that I did was on Kilkenny Community Radio on the Start Me Up program with Roisin McClerick. Only person who responded to me. So one of the challenges we face here is the way that the media treats self-employment for people from marginalized communities, or basically ignore the challenges that exist. So this particular course is an online course. It runs over 12 weeks. Each week we deal with a different topic, but also each week it's a 2-hour lecture, but we invite 2 guest speakers each week. One is an expert on the topic of that day, and the other is an entrepreneur who has a disability, who talks about their experiences as an entrepreneur and who shares the challenges and the insights that they've got from that. And we've had fabulous speakers such as Sinead Kane and Sean Gallagher already talk to us about the challenges that they've faced and how they've overcome them. In addition to that, each participant on the course receives their own business mentor, and these are provided through the local enterprise office network, and that's funded through the Department of Enterprise. So in addition to the course, everybody has got their own mentor. We also provide people with an online tool called Validate, which is a wonderful, wonderful tool And basically it's the business model canvas, and you fill it out by answering a series of questions. So each week we give the course participants one pillar of that business model canvas to complete. And, and bit by bit, the business model and the business plan, comes to fruition, and it comes, it becomes developed, and it then will be submitted at the end of the program. To finish the program, what we have is a panel of financiers, Dragon's Den for kind of a type idea. One is a venture capitalist, one is from Microfinance Ireland, and another is from a bank. And we're hoping that if they see the potential in these business ideas, that between them, they will work out some form of funding arrangement to support these people. And none of that is guaranteed. The other thing that's not guaranteed in the program is that all participants will start their own business. Indeed, I don't expect everybody to start their own business. What some people will find is that once they've evaluated their business idea, they might discover that it's not viable, that there is no long-term sustainability in that business idea, and therefore, it's not worth starting. They may also discover that this idea is not for them, okay, or self-employment is not for them, and that's fine too. What we are offering in the course is a supportive environment that allows people with disability who have an idea, a business idea, to work through their business idea, develop it, evaluate it, write a business plan. And at the end of that process, they should have a really either a good business plan or a decision not to move forward. In addition to that, people taking the course can also receive a certificate, because the course is validated through TU Dublin. It is level 6 in the National Framework of Qualifications, and people who are successful receive 5 ECTS credits for successfully passing the course. So there's also academic credit to it. It's very exciting. I'm delighted to see that Niamh and Margaret are so enthusiastic about it. It's been a huge learning experience for us all. But the good news is we will be running the course again in 2022. Right now, we're not quite sure when it will start, but we do know it will be starting. It just depends on finalizing funding arrangements for next year. So anyone that's interested in that can email me, I would say, in January. So it's thomas.cooney@tudublin.ie. And at that time, we will know plans for the year ahead. And if we will be recruiting a new cohort of course participants for the course at that time. So my thanks to Open Doors Initiative for their generous sponsorship and funding of the program. ODI are a great organization to work with, and that's why it's my great pleasure to moderate the panel discussion, which we're now going to have regarding entrepreneurs and the, I suppose, the messages that they can offer or insights they can offer from their experiences in starting their own business. With that, I'd like to invite Jane, Dennis, and Taluani to join us on screen. And I will invite each in turn to introduce themselves and their business and just give some background about themselves before we get into the questions of the day. So I'm going to begin by asking Jane to introduce herself and her business. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Tom. Thank you very much. And thanks for sharing all you did, your project and all the work you've been investing. It's pretty amazing. So there was a lot of insights in there for me listening to you. I'd like to describe myself to start with. I'm a white female with long, dark brown hair, and I have green eyes, and I'm wearing a white blouse. That's me from a physical appearance. And then in terms of who I am and what I do, so Jean O'Neill is my name, as already has been mentioned. I'm a master coach with neuroscience, and I coach in a lot of different modalities. I coach in career coaching, executive coaching, neuro wellness coaching for stress and performance related issues, emotional intelligence coaching, conversational intelligence, the list goes on. But I suppose most importantly for me as a coach, I have a great interest and passion in neuroscience and what goes on below the surface with humans from a biological level, because we are all biological human beings. As much as we would like to think we're logical thinking beings, we're not. We're biological emotional beings that sometimes think. My business, I just set it up last year. I come from a background of 18 years from the corporate environment. So I think I was definitely overdue to make a change. Before I did, it was a mix of daunting and exciting, going out on my own. But who I am now and who I was a couple of years ago are two completely different people in terms of launching my own business and doing work that I really love and enjoy. And I would encourage everyone to explore that for themselves because of what it can bring you and open up potential.
So much, Jane, for that introduction and background to yourself.
Thank you.
We'll explore some of that reasoning starting the business in just a moment. Dennis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Dennis Kennedy, and just I'm a white male, short hair. I've got a beard, a goatee, blue jacket, slightly darker blue shirt, and I've got blue eyes. And my business is UK Accessibility, specialising in disability awareness training, accessibility training, and disability consultation. So this is everything from teaching companies what is disability, what is the legislation involved, what is reasonable accommodation, and what is, I suppose, website accessibility comes into it. But what is assistive technology? How's that kind of benefit the people, not just people with disabilities, but benefits everybody? How does universal design benefit everybody? So that's what I would do. And I suppose the initial thing is where I'd have outcomes to this course, because I wouldn't just train the business, but work with them on a consultation basis to make sure that policies and procedures are implemented, to try and bring them up, not just legally compliant, but to bring up to kind of the best standards in accessibility. And a bit about my background is I was in I suppose, a road traffic accident when I was 6. 1986, show my age, but I spent four weeks in coma, and as a result I've got a brain injury which affects the left side of my body. Now the thing about this is an additional advantage to my business, because I have not just the lived experience, not just the academic experience. I've got a master's in disability. I've got over 30 years lived experience. So when it's explaining the barriers to businesses, it's not, I'm able to explain the barriers very well in terms of the attitudes involved in kind of hiring people with disabilities, and I suppose breaking down a lot of social barriers as well as the physical barriers with that. So yeah, that's me. And again, I feel very blessed to be doing the kind of work I'm doing, because it's kind of fits in my personality as such. So yeah, that's me.
Dennis, thank you so much. And again, we'll come back and revisit some of the comments that you made there in your introduction. Taluwani, would you like to introduce yourself and yeah, a little about your background, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Cooney. I'm a fan, and it's great to meet you here. I've been looking forward to that. So thanks very much for this opportunity, and of course to Open Initiatives for giving us the opportunity to be here today to share our thoughts with these beautiful people online today. So by way of physical introduction, I am a woman of sub-Saharan descent. So that's to say commonly people refer to us as Black people. And I'm bespectacled, I wear glasses. And today I'm wearing an orange top. I'm also wearing a black jacket. So by way of introduction in relation to what I do, on a day-to-day basis, I'm a leadership learning and inclusion consultant. And what I do is I support organizations from a broad perspective of leadership and in people development. So I work with organizations to help them develop those strategies and those behavioral patterns that allow people within organization to feel as if they belong there. So it's really about working with the HR department, with the managers and with teams to build a more people-centered, a more cohesive culture. And I think it's because of what I have, it came as a result of what I suffered in the workplace. And I found that people needed to feel that we spend so long at work, that when we come to work, we need to feel that it's a place where we belong, where we're comfortable and where we thrive, not just survive. I've worked extensively in terms of learning and training with different organizations. I work with the ETB and various other community groups, supporting their learning and development goals. I'm a coach, and incidentally, Jean and I went to the same coaching school. So we're coaching colleagues. And what I do is I'm a leadership and communications coach. What I do is I help leaders to focus on their personal development and their personal growth in order to lead authentically, to lead consciously, and to lead effectively, and in order to be able to communicate in such a way that their own personal, their best self is in that communication. Because I've studied leaders, and I realized that they carry so much within, but they don't sometimes know how to communicate what they carry within so that people that they want to reach, that want to bring on board into their vision, get it. So that's where we step in. That's where I step in with my skills. So I support them to be able to communicate in such a way that people come on board, they buy into their vision, and it makes the work easier. Because I'm really interested in what Professor Cooney does, because I'm an academic as well. I'm completing a PhD in Coventry University, and it's because I actually went into that because of all the things that I had gone through as a woman of African descent from a migrant background within my community. I've lived in Ireland for 20 years, and I know we'll get to that, but because I found it so challenging to step into the space I knew I could in Ireland, I found out there was the gap there, and that is why I started Her Genuity Africa. Before then, it was Kilkenny Initiative for African Women. I live in Kilkenny. And it was because I'd seen a lot of women that were brought in from UNHCR program then, in 2008. And a lot of them, in my opinion, and from my interaction with them, seemed not to have moved significantly into any direction. They kind of stuck. So we approached the county council and we got some funding. And thereafter, we approached the county council again to say, look, we need more money. And then we were able to get the European Training Fund, for which we ran a program in Kilkenny for 4 years. But then I moved on to start Her Genuity Africa because I realized that it wasn't so much about entrepreneurship, but the fact that there was a gap in the awareness of the benefits of entrepreneurship among people of African descent or migrants in general. So that was when I started Her Genuity Africa. And it's a membership organization that supports people of African descent, females particularly, because from research, realized that there's a gap in terms, or there's actually potential disadvantage in being female, in being migrant female, and the migrant female from a developing nation. So the triple disadvantage notion. So that brought me to starting Heterogeneity Africa, where we address issues of challenges and obstacles that are peculiar to us. And so I started that organization, and then that made me progress to wanting to study it, and that brought me to the PhD program. So I am, my focus is on inclusive entrepreneurship, and I'm focused on migrant entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial leadership, and entrepreneurial education. And that's, I'll hand over back to you, Professor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's funny, I was about to ask you, what is your PhD on? And how far advanced are you with the PhD? How far?
I'll have one more year.
Okay, very good.
One more year.
And obviously, after this, feel free to contact me if I can be of any support.
Absolutely.
Because I'm going to contact you for some help. We are currently, we've just launched last week a survey on.
I've seen it actually. Yes.
Yeah.
To me. Yes.
So,
and you know what I said? I said, oh my goodness, he's taking my research. He's taking my research.
Well, let's share it. Let's share.
Absolutely.
And because just on that, folks, back in 2008, I led a big study on immigrant entrepreneurship in Ireland, and immigrant entrepreneurial activity is higher than the general population. Okay, but the problem is that much of that activity is because people are doing it out of necessity rather than opportunity, because they're not, due to discrimination, they're not succeeding in career goals in the way that their talents deserve. And the other problem that we're having is that many of the businesses that start up are just trading within their own communities, and therefore are not viable on a long-term basis.
Absolutely.
So two huge challenges there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and look, folks, for anyone that's talking to me either by chat or that might come on or something like that, please call me Tom, because we're amongst friends here. So everyone attending this, that's who we are. I noticed with the introductions with the speakers that Dennis and Taluani are focusing on individuals and with organizations. Jane, is your work only with individuals, or do you work with organizations also?
I do actually. I work with organizations also, and I suppose I realized after I spieled off all the different areas that I coach in, I probably left out one of the most important and relevant ones, and that's really applicable today. So I'm a neurodivergent coach as well, where I coach people with invisible disabilities. So anyone on the spectrum, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. And I suppose uniquely enough, when I started out and when I launched my business, there was some things I wasn't aware of myself. So I only received some diagnosis last November, interestingly enough. Through my own lived experience with that, and then my own interest in neuroscience and, how we operate, our executive functioning skills, our nervous system and our brain. And I suppose my area of hyper focus is understanding and unraveling and peeling back all the layers associated with the challenges that show up with invisibility challenges, because invisible challenges are 70% not seen, so sometimes maybe people wouldn't fully understand disabilities in terms of if they can't see it. And when with 70% of them not actually being seen, which is incredibly tough and challenging on people, because I don't want to use the word normal, okay, but in terms of, everyone looks the same as everyone else, but that's on the outside. But then on the inside, in terms of how that person is neurocognitively functioning, is a completely different story. And anyone with any of these spectrum conditions under the neurodiversity umbrella, they'll all come with their own set of what I love to say is strengths and challenges. So I've recently launched my full set of neurodiversity suite of services, where I am working with organizations and really growing that space. So I suppose I provide the coaching for neurodivergent individuals. So for example, people will come to me for career coaching or emotional intelligence coaching. And when I peel back the layers in a consultation, I will be quick to recognize that someone has potentially got an underlying condition. Obviously, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I do refer clients. And since I was diagnosed myself, about, I would say 40 to 50 people out of hundreds and hundreds of people I've coached since November have gone and got their diagnosis. And they're then coming back to me for coaching so that they can now operate using the right user manual. So it's a huge vested area that I am completely passionate about, and I'm helping organizations become neurodiversity smart, basically to leverage talent. And as Talwani has mentioned there, about inclusivity and where people belong. And that's incredibly important to me. Again, from my own lived experience, the first 14 years in the corporate environment was great. And what I didn't realize, the last 4 years, I definitely struggled more in it. And I struggled more in the corporate environment for the last 4 years because I was spoiled, I was ruined. For the first 14 years, I had an office to myself. And then the last 4 years where we were put into an open plan. And, I just put things down to stress or being overworked, not fully realizing what my own invisible challenges were. So for example, sensory noise issues, needing a quiet place to work. So I was constantly hogging the focus booths in work, disappearing in there, turning off the light in there, and happily working away in peace and quiet. But then for the times I had to be out in the open plan, that was a very distracting environment for me. And of course, I didn't realize at the time I was neurodivergent. And I can safely say that there is so many people out there like me that don't realize that they're neurodivergent. And I would say getting a diagnosis was an incredibly positive and awakening experience. And when I look back, an awful lot of the dots join and connect together. So helping organizations with that whole piece from what I refer to as implementing neurodiversity at work programs and different consultations, and providing training within it as well, and coaching that supports the whole system with it, and connecting and learning from others as well.
There's a couple of points I want to connect to, Jean. First of all, the notion about hidden disability. I remember having a discussion with a friend one evening and talking about 13.5% of the population of the country have a disability, and he was astounded. And then he said, actually, the thing is, I only see disability. I don't kind of appreciate that disability can be hidden. Okay. So unless somebody was kind of visibly disabled, then it just didn't register, right? So that was the first. And the second thing that came up in that discussion was that he was seeing equality, diversity, and inclusion in companies as kind of corporate social responsibility and kind of doing good for society, where I was arguing it's about, it makes sense. It's about hiring the best people. It's about employing people and allowing the talents to shine, because we all have abilities. And being inclusive is good business. It's good, it's good bottom line. It's good. It's not just about being a nice company.
there's a huge profit base in it, actually. And when, in terms of, we'll say, the span of how disability shows up in many different ways for people, hiring the people that actually have the disabilities and know the disabilities inside out from both a lived and social experience, they are then, from a creative and innovative way, able to contribute greatly to new products, devices that are required and needed. So if they're not including these people, they're leaving out a huge market. And not just that, Generation Z have been integrated in a neurodiverse educational environment. And Generation Z are coming into the workplace now, and when they're not seeing accommodations around assistive technology, or if it's dyslexia, there might be some things they need with that. But when they're seeing this lack of understanding, or maybe prejudice or stigma with it, so they're not, they're choosing, and they're choosing wisely and carefully who they go to work for. So if when companies are not up to speed in neurodiversity, and the needs, accommodations and considerations at an individual level, meet everyone at an individual level. And there's a lot of talk about equality in that, and equitable. And the gap I would love to see bridged is creating a universal approach, where it's accessible to everyone in terms of what people need, without maybe necessarily it becoming a big deal. And what I mean by that, so I was speaking on IBEC last week, and where they have centralized part of their assistive technology requests in their company, which is absolutely brilliant. So now people don't need to ask a manager if they need a special piece of equipment or something that helps them in their work, which is brilliant. And that's an example of what a universal culture looks like. Just to put it out there. But that figure you're talking about, a 13.5%, that's set to grow to 20% by 2026. And the reason for that being is people are aging and acquiring disabilities as they get older. And there is also a massive increase in children getting diagnosed with neurodiverse conditions. And within that, the light in the torch is being shined on parents, and parents are getting diagnosed with the conditions as well, because they're going through the process with their kids. And next of all, they're realizing, oh, okay, I have dysgraphia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD, gosh, I'm a bit on the spectrum as well, whatever it is. So it's a very, very interesting space. And I know I've probably been talking way too long, but if there was one tiny piece I'd love to just double click on that you mentioned. And I guess I thought it was a sad state of affairs to hear you say that the lack of interest that was there media-wise for promoting entrepreneurship for marginalised groups of people. And I agree with you that, if different entrepreneur centres are saying, oh, look, we treat everyone the same, etc. But if people don't know that door is there, Tom, as you said, then they don't know to open it. And very, very specifically, a client I'm working with at the moment, a father of a son that is on the autism spectrum. He didn't get the Leaving Cert results he wants. And he's shut himself off. He doesn't want to speak to anyone. He doesn't, that's it. He's written himself off. And I think there's a big piece there to in schools and in transition year to educate them on the options of entrepreneurship as well, because there's a tendency to, well, what do you want to work as? With that, there, you know, there's so many options, and I think there's a great avenue there for you to explore, Tom, in how you continue to put it out in all the avenues you're exploring, with giving it visibility and a boost.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, I need to be clear. I don't see self-employment as the solution to all the problems.
Yeah, no, but it's an option. It's one. It's one of many.
Yes,
and it's a big one. It's a great one.
Yeah, we need to make sure that option becomes available. Taluani, I saw you nodding furiously in agreement with Jean on many of the topics that she was talking about. What were your thoughts and experiences around, you know, that the issues of inclusion, the benefits of inclusion? That, like, you were particularly you know, seem to be nodding in agreement around that. What have you found to be the challenges, and how do you present the benefits?
Let me start this way. I actually went into entrepreneurship and self-employment out of frustration, because I wasn't getting any openings for a job, and I knew I had the skills. So I was quite frustrated. In fact, the final rejection was the rejection I had before I started my business was quite dramatic. And so it led me to, okay, now I need to do something differently. And why I was nodding at a lot of things that Jean said is because while she was talking a lot about neurodivergence and neurodiversity, it does resonate with me in terms of somebody of a marginalized, well, of a different background, you know, that's going through marginalization. Because you see, usually people say, oh, the supports are there, but it's a one size fits all kind of approach, and it does not work. It doesn't work because when you're coming from a different background, your experiences are shaped by where you're coming from as well. So when you come into a space where you don't find people that look like you, and I've had the opportunities as an inclusion consultant to support HR strategies in sense of that. So you're walking into an interview room and you see no one out of a panel of 4 that looks like you. Straight away, something goes on in your brain. You're kind of thinking, okay, this is probably not going to work in my favor, or you know, you're nervous. So many things going on in your head. And we're trying to speak to people that are HR, say, look, inclusion is not a box that you tick. It's a heart thing. It's you putting yourself, it's about empathy. And it's not just about integration. Inclusion is about you putting yourself in people's shoes and saying, how would I want to be treated if I was in their space? And then creating those opportunities for them to really feel that they belong. And I'm emphasizing the word belong because one of the reasons why my first degree was in broadcasting. So I worked as a broadcaster at home in Nigeria for a long time. And so I serve as in my own community radio as a newscaster, and I present a show there. One of the reasons why I stay and that place is so much a part, close to my heart, is because of the inclusive nature of that environment. Nobody sees who you are. I come in all my bravado and all my Africanness and the noise I come in and make, and it's just there. I don't have to feel that I need to conform, because when I feel I need to conform, then there's no inclusion there. So we come into spaces where we have to continually feel, oh, am I here because they needed to tick a box because they needed somebody of an African descent here? Or am I here because they actually see that I have value to add in this space? Or, you know, am I here because, you know, they actually see that I can contribute? Or am I here because somebody that knows somebody just recommended me? Oh, you know what? We need to tick that box. So all of these conversations are conversations that go on in the minds of people. I was actually speaking to somebody that is quite well known, who I felt would be really supportive. And I was saying to her, you know, I'd like to have a discussion with you about how we can support more people of African descent. And the reason why I'm saying people of African descent is because we are very obviously different. So that makes it more peculiar, and that makes our needs different, that have to be addressed differently. So I was saying, I'd like to have a conversation with you about how we can support people of African descent into jobs, because I'd done a survey within the Southeast and I wanted to see what skill set we had. And I realized that the analysis showed me that there was quite a number of underemployment within the African community. So you had people that had masters from their home country and they had masters here, different skill set. But then they were mostly in care, or they were mostly in taxi drivers, you know, all of the jobs. And I have spoken to so many of them. And there's this sense of resignation, you know, I'm resigned to my fate kind of thing. And that was why, for me, I want to stand up strong for my community, because when I went through my own challenge, the final rejection in 2009, I started in business because I didn't want to play the victim's role. I didn't want that approach. And I said, I can do this. I had a point to prove to myself and to other people around me that this can be done. So there is that gap there for people of African descent, that we don't actually feel that there is space. So I tell you the truth, when we find somebody within our community that gets a really good job, they send a message around, look, I got this job. And we're like, oh yeah, it's like a kind of celebration. Oh, you got there, wow. Don't forget us when you get there, you know, put our names forward. And that's what we do. You know, we're not that big a community, so we kind of know ourselves. But it's like, oh yeah, don't forget me, you know my skills, you know. So if one person gets there, it's like an open door for every one of us. And sometimes it can be frustrating. So I was speaking to this person, this high level person, and I said, would you please, let's have a chat about how we can support more people of African descent into jobs. What she said to me was shocking. She said, well, you guys need to know how to speak English first, because without English, you really can't go far, you know. And then she made other comments and all that. And I have learned to think and speak strategically. So I said, oh yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, she met me when I'm older and more mature and more of a leader. So I knew what to say. So when she had known me when I was younger, I knew what I was said as well. So anyway, I said, yes, but you know, I'd like to have that conversation with you. We can take it from there, and I understand your thoughts. But it was shocking, the perception, the myopic perception of this person. Because, and that's the sense in which we approached. So when one person is allowed into the job market, it's like, oh my goodness. And Jean mentioned tokenism, and that's a lot of times when we feel that, okay, this is just to tick the box. And we're looking for opportunities. And I have this conversation all the time, trying to support organizations, inclusive leadership. We need to see people of African descent on boards. We need to see their skills shine, you know, because the fate of our second generation is hinged on that. Because when they feel that this is all that can come out of this, all we see our parents do, people walk after what they see, the model that they see. And so it's going to be that same story. So while Jean was talking about neurodiversity, I saw, you know, the parallel in my community.
Yeah, and just like on that, like, people don't appreciate that, you know, qualifications such as masters and degrees are not recognized in Ireland, you know, from other countries. So you might have a degree or master's or PhD even from, you know, a country outside of Ireland that may not be recognized.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
dismissed, right,
Professor, but you see, I understand that, but a lot of us, you know, even though I had my first degree at home, I have a degree from UCD. I went back to 4 years of UCD, did my master's here, did other degrees, and having a PhD as well. So a lot of us have progressed. We realize that we're not sitting on, oh, I came to Ireland with this, so you must employ me. No, we've progressed sufficiently. But We haven't had the opportunity to showcase the values that we can bring into organizations. You're good when you are volunteering. You're good when you are interning. But when it comes to the real job, there's no space for you. And I tell you, what actually led me to say, look, I'm starting my own business was because someone said, a CEO said to me, and I thought the interview had gone brilliantly. I'd had so many other interviews, and sometimes not getting called, but she said to me, or I was told she said, we don't think our customers would like your voice on the phone. And when I went, because I needed closure, I went about a month later to say, I want to know how my interview went. Well, she said, oh, it went fine. I couldn't fault it, but there was something, she said, there was something you didn't have. And from 2008 till now, I'm still wondering what that something was, that I didn't have. But it propelled me, and it's still propelling me. And, I'm hoping that, some of us would be a light for our community to say it's possible.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. And that comment about the voice and the accent is real concern. As a Cork man with a strong accent, I'm not sure how I respond there, because I'm sure, and I don't mean to be flippant.
That's fine.
Dennis, you're the one that's going into organizations, trying to persuade organizations. Look, this is not about ticking boxes, as both speakers already said. This has got to be about the business value, about hiring the right talent, and that's the point I was making just a moment ago around the qualifications. Like immigrants in Ireland are more highly qualified, more highly educated, okay, and are of younger age than the Irish population. Like, that's a statistic you can get in this from the CSO. So, and I want it to be broader than maybe than just disability or immigrants, but how do we persuade businesses, that this is of business value and it's about talent acquisition, wherever that talent might come from?
Yeah, I suppose again, it's a fair business. Unfortunately, I brought up yesterday, disability tends to be at the bottom of the diversity ladder. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I say. But like a lot of businesses already employ, like Jean, I'm sure Jean's aware, a lot of people within these organizations, and often they're the best employees, already neurodivergent, but they may not kind of come forward because they're of stigma, or of fear of stigma, because there is a bigger stigma in terms of intellectual or developmental hitting disabilities than there is, and that's mental health related. There tends to be a bigger stigma. So, but imagine they were supported, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say to businesses, well, look, the biggest challenge in business is finding and retaining talent. So what happens if your best talent becomes disabled, which is highly likely, any one of us could enter that community tomorrow. I'm sorry, I'm a member of that community, but anyone else could enter that community tomorrow, or they could get injured, workplace injured. So how do you bring that employee back in a supported fashion, where the accommodations that's in place to support? And in doing that, my hope is that I'll change the mindset into, well, okay, hiring people with disabilities, there's a lot of hidden disabilities out there, I try and tell them as well, look, your customer base, it's an $8 trillion market, why would you ignore that? Why would your premises not be designed for, include the aging population? And it's often simple little things,
Dennis, what are people saying about why they're not doing this? Is it because there's a fear of I don't know, it's going to cost more money? I hear things like this being said, it's all cost us more, or I'm not sure how often they'll be out of work, and
Sure. Yeah.
It's all that. I presume there's things being said to you and there's things not being said to you in terms of what the challenges are.
Yeah, it's just essentially, like you've said, it's the expense. They automatically think that if they hire somebody with a disability, they're going to be out of work more, they're going to be late. It's going to be an expensive process putting in place them accommodations. And that's where I make them aware of the grants that's available, where we'll look at there's government grants that the accommodation, regional accommodation grant. So it really is, and it really is the opposite of what they're thinking. And like people, as you know, neurodivergent, I'm sure Jean's aware. A lot of people within our category tend to be more focused, therefore are on time. They're the opposites, you know, they're probably more on time than people without, are more kind of less sick days. You know, it's kind of the big misconception, and it all falls back to the social barriers within disability, the attitudes, the negative beliefs of disability.
Dennis, I'm going to ask you a final question, and then I'm going to ask Jean and Talawani as well, because I've just realized we're running late. I can't believe that we're over time already, and we've got an excellent speaker coming up next. So I've got to finish up. So very quickly, as someone who's moved into self-employment, what messages, what words of advice would you offer to people who are listening to our conversation? Because we've talked about a lot of the challenges. Let's finish with some positives, and what the benefits and what words of advice would you give people? And Dennis, when you finish, Jean, I'll then turn to you, and then Joanne. Okay.
Well, I say, I mean, use your network, build a network like I do through BNI, this network international, the Chamber of Commerce maybe, and use your connections to get connections to the place you want, because we can't be, I mean, I'm not a social media expert, I'm not a marketing expert, but I have people who I can probably turn to if it needs be. So again, expand your network, generate experience. I guest lecture in the University of Limerick, and I suppose in that way I gain testimonials to get me into, that will kind of propel me into other areas. So don't be afraid, always kind of say yes within reason into opportunities to speak or to further increase your level of testimonials and your network.
Folks, can I just say that what Dennis has just said there, I would just so support the notion of tapping into networks, the notion of working with others, of collaborating, of co-creation. Nobody can be successful in business on their own. It's just not possible. Right? So you're going to need help, whether that's a business mentor that you might get through the local enterprise office, or whether it's friends with particular expertise. Like, don't ask a friend for financial advice unless they're an accountant, right? I've seen in the past, someone in the pub asking for advice and the person not having that experience. And Dennis, you're so right on that. Jane, what are your advice, and what have you got from the journey?
Okay, well, what I would say first of all is maybe reiterating a point you made earlier, Tom, when you were describing about the TU Entrepreneur program you're working. And what I really liked about that is that, you know, the clear message in me for it is that you've offered a space for people to explore it, okay? To not initially, if you have a business idea, you're just exploring it. And what I would say is, from a mindset perspective, in terms of having a sense of purpose is incredibly important. So get behind your why. So what is your why? Why are you doing this? Why is it important to you? And our purpose then, you know, first of all, we have to get a sense of self and engage with our heart brain with it, and how we're connected to this, why it's important. But our purpose then, you know, branches out way bigger than that, in terms of how are we offering a service or goods or products to someone? How are we contributing and helping others? So when you get a real sense of that, then I think, you know, you're looking at practicalities, putting a roadmap in place. And as Dennis has been saying there as well, lean in on support, networks. No person is an island. And the biggest, most important message, I would say, anyone seriously looking into this and exploring it, you are not on your own. So that's one story that anyone stepping into this space is considering, is that's one self-limiting belief that you can actually bury it from the start, because there is back to work enterprise allowances. There is endless professional supports and networks out there, you know, and you can have grants coming in while you start off, once you register a company name, and the list of courses is endless. Anything from doing your taxes to your business plan, all of that is available complimentary to you. So you can really, really lean in on all the expertise and people there that are actually genuinely bursting to help you as well, which I am one of those. And there's so many of us out there that would love to see you explore the opportunities that we've had a chance to explore for ourselves, and to wish everyone the very best in doing that for themselves.
Thank you so much, Jean. And actually saying there, I love the notion of the why. I think that's so important. But also, you talked about people giving back. Can I just say, folks, that what I've noticed over the years is that highly successful entrepreneurs are extraordinarily generous in terms of supporting new talent coming through. And it's been my pleasure to know some of the great entrepreneurs of this country who have generously given their time to helping people start up their own business. Don't worry, pick up a phone, email them, they will help. Taluani, the last words to you.
Thank you, Professor Cooney. Yeah, so I'd like to say that whoever is here today, you shouldn't be afraid to step out. Step out and showcase your brilliance. Because a lot of times the fear that we have is just inside us. But for the moment you conceive an idea, drill down to be very clear which problem you're actually solving. You know, drill down, which problem exactly am I solving? And then who exactly are the people I'm solving these problems for? Right? And how do I make money? At least we should have at least 2 or 3 clear ways of how I am making. How will this business bring me money? 2 or 3 clear ways. And one of the things I learned is not just to work in my business, because I did a lot of that in the early days, working in my business operations. I was getting called here, there, everywhere. And even just to step into that networking thing, I almost lost my marketing skills, because when people saw how good I am with my work, I was being referred here, there, everywhere. But I kept on working in the business, and I stopped working on the business. I stopped looking at where the business could go, how far, and which other areas I could pursue, and which other skills I needed to develop, and who I could bring on. So it's also important to work on the business and not just in the business. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
And that's great advice to finish on. That is super advice to finish on. So with that, can I just thank you, Taluani, Dennis and Jean, so very much. It's been, I would absolutely love to be sitting around the table with the 3 of you having a conversation about all this, because I think the conversation would just keep going for hours. I've really enjoyed your company.
Thank you.
And insights has been really, really excellent. So much, and hopefully one day we will get the opportunity to meet in person.
Thank you. I'd love to. It's been a lovely experience. Thanks, everyone. It's really lovely.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks to Claire.
Thank you. And with that, I'm handing back to Jan and to our next speaker, Mike Kelly.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to those brilliant speakers. Speaking personally, I have a hidden disability and I'm an entrepreneur. And I've been lucky that people have had faith in my abilities and work, but those key messages that we need to support each other to succeed and remove the fear and the lack of knowledge around various barriers. And to quote Taluani, showcase the brilliance of diversity. Employers need to see it, society needs to see it. We're changing as a society. We need to embrace change and difference. and see the opportunities it offers. And it's needed and it's wanted. So it's really important we see this and have faith in ourselves as entrepreneurs and really grow our skills and our ambitions to work. And with that said, I'd like to now introduce Mike Kelly. Mike is going to give some insights to entrepreneurship from his vast range of experience. Mike founded Sarum. It's a voluntary organisation which helps refugee entrepreneurs in Ireland to create and grow their own business. And the name comes from the Irish word Sarum. I'm probably saying that wrong, Mike, you can correct me, meaning to overcome, rise above or exceed, which I think is really poignant in the conversation we're having. All of the things that a refugee entrepreneur needs to do if they're to be successful business owners, and that applies right across the board. He founded it as an international entrepreneur for the past 20 years, who's won multiple business awards and is a qualified chartered director with the Institute of Directors. Mike has also secured funding for a number of his own businesses through Enterprise Ireland's High Potential Startup Unit, multiple local enterprise offices or LEOs, and private equity firms. And Mike is also available to consult with refugee entrepreneurs to refine their business plans and strategy, help secure funding, and grow the business in any way he can. So with that generous offer, I will pass you on to Mike. And Mike, thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome, Matt. Thanks, Jan. First of all, Jan, can you hear me okay? I'll assume you can. You can. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. That sounded like a great panel discussion. I caught quite a lot of it. So great to get those chats in place. What ODI have asked me to do today really is talk about the practicalities. So look, I've pretty much spent almost all of my working life as an entrepreneur. Nowadays, I mentor entrepreneurs from different marginalized backgrounds usually. And in this presentation, really, I think I'd like to bring some of the practicalities. What's it like to actually start a business? And not just my own experience, but what do I see entrepreneurs from marginalized communities doing at the moment? What are the most common mistakes they're making? What are the pitfalls that you need to look out for when you're starting your own business? And my goal really is to help you shortcut some of these things, maybe dodge some of the mistakes that I see happening out there. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully, again, Jan, you might be able to come up and let me know if you can see this okay. Yeah, you can see it. That's great. Okay. So look, this presentation really is a standard one I do, but it's quite relevant for here. So I have a business idea, and now what do I do? And of course, let me try to get this onto a slideshow if it will actually play that way. You know, what's the first thing that we do on these things? Well, everybody says, well, look, you're an entrepreneur, you know, hit the accelerator, get going, just start doing everything straight away. And what I always say to people is, well, look, hang on a minute here. If you jump into this too early, you could blow your entire opportunity. So a lot of entrepreneurs will come to me and say, well, you know, I'm ready to go. So I'm going to set up a limited company straight away. I'm going to rent premises. I'm going to start building the website, raising funding, all of these different things. And I would always caution them, look, hang on a minute. There are much more important things that you need to do first. And those important things are the pieces I'm going to try to address during this quick presentation. First of all, where are your customers? You know, line up customers. I'm ready to go. I've got this business going. And the big thing often is, well, do you know that there really is demand? First of all, I hear a lot of entrepreneurs saying to me, well, look, it's great. I've got no competition. I'm ready to go. Well, if you've got no competition, why is that? Why don't you have competition? Is it that there really isn't a market for this yet? Or is it that you're too early in the market? you're going to be too small to build the market yourself. So no competition is not necessarily a good thing. The other thing you need to do is make sure that you've got a clear understanding. Who are your potential customers? What do they look like? What are they buying at the moment? Have you run any experiments? Have you been able to tease the market in some low cost way? If you're going to go into something like retail, can you get in? Can you start looking at shops? Can you look at the streets? What sort of footfall is going by? If it's going to be online, can you do some sort of keyword volume research? Have you been able to sell anyone else's products that are actually in this area? So before you start building out your own product line, can you sell your competitions? Because that's an easy way for you to establish whether there really is any demand for these products at all in the first place. Because remember, nothing happens in business until something gets sold. People get caught up with business being register a company, get a website, raise funding, but actually none of that really matters if you can't actually sell anything. So these are some of the key things to remember. And to my earlier point about registering a limited company, once you do that, you are committed to meeting certain regulatory requirements. And that takes time, and that also usually takes money. You're going to have to hire somebody for that. I had one company come to me, and this was a refugee entrepreneur to be, and what he wanted to do was import clothes from Turkey. He felt there was an advantage to cost advantage and so on, but he had no proof of concept that this would work. Yet he was looking to rent premises near the Grafton Street area, and these are the sort of pitfalls that people do fall into. Until you've proven in some low-cost experimental way that there really is demand and you can make money from this, you can't start doing things like taking on premises or registering limited companies unless you have a lot of money already behind you. Also understanding who are my competition in this. So as I mentioned, if you don't have competition, unless you're the next Steve Jobs or Henry Ford with an awful lot of money behind you, it's a bad thing. People don't often recognize that. Also, you need to be able to answer pretty simple questions like, well, what is your value proposition for a specific customer set in relation to specific competitors? And these are the sort of things, obviously, that Tom will be teaching on his course in entrepreneurship. But these are really critical things that you have to understand. Also, basic things like, well, what's your unique selling point? I have lots of people coming to me with ideas, for example, around baking. I want to start a baking business. Well, okay, why do you want to do that? Well, I like baking and people tell me that I'm very good at it and my cakes are good. Well, okay, nobody's going to tell you that your cakes are bad. The way people tell you that your cakes are bad is if they won't hand over to strangers, won't hand over their own hard-earned money for that. So what's your real USP, your unique selling point on that? How are you going to differentiate yourself from it? The whole point of this is to try to stack the probabilities in your favor. And if you don't have a differentiated offering, if you have what we call a Me Too offering, such as I'm good at baking, the chances of your business working out are pretty weak. So understanding things like unique selling points, sustainable competitive advantage, all of these different things are really important. And the way you can typically tell that is, are strangers buying from you? So I always encourage people, try to get some time at a farmer's market or some low cost way like that. Don't count on friends and family. They're not real customers. They will buy your stuff even if they don't like it. You've got a real business opportunity if you can convince multiple strangers to buy. And the next thing we want to look at then is, well, how can you be sure that your business model is viable? Lots of people have lots of business ideas out there that on the face of it are going to make money, but actually when they get into it, they realize all I'm doing here is losing money. The more I'm at this, the more money I'm losing. So part of that is really getting forensic about the costs. And even if you're a sole trader, and even if you think, well, look, my costs are just me, they're not really. First of all, there's opportunity cost. So every hour you spend on your business is an hour that you can't spend earning money somewhere else. There's also all of the different overheads, including things like travel. But if you're going to start employing people, then it's really important. And that's where you need to start getting involved in things like scenario planning. And you can either do that with your local enterprise office, or you can hire an accountant. But looking through things like cash flow forecasting, if I change X, what happens to Y? Or, well, I've got a nice little business going on now, but if I increase my sales by 50% or 50x, so 50 times, well, what's going to actually happen to my costs? Sometimes your costs won't go up as quickly, so you'll be more profitable, but sometimes actually they'll completely overshoot, and you'll find that you've had to take on so many new costs, such as employees, larger premises, and so on, that you're now losing money. And if you don't scenario plan that out with some cash flow forecasting, you'll find yourself going bankrupt pretty quickly. So all of that type of thing is really important to do, and to take some time to really make sure that you're understanding your costs. I also have lots of entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs, I should say, these are not real entrepreneurs, coming to me saying, I have an idea, and I'll ask, okay, well, have you got a business plan? No business plan yet. Okay, fair enough, no problem. Just send me over, your 1 or 2 pages about what it is that you're doing. And the response is, well, I don't even have that. And for me, that's just ludicrous. You at least have to have a business brief in order to be taken seriously. So when people come to me and are looking for mentoring, looking for advice and ideas, how can I take this forward? How can I get funding? My response is, nobody is going to talk to you if you can't even be bothered to take the time out to put your thoughts down on a couple of pages. Ideally, the outline of a business plan, but okay, if you don't have the knowledge to do that, well, something like a business canvas, and I've got a link to some business canvas here, or a lean canvas that you can use. But for potential entrepreneurs that come even to me, even just a mentor, and they can't be bothered to put down in 2 or 3 pages what they are thinking about for their business, well, I'm not going to take them seriously, and I'm not going to help them, and certainly no source of funding is going to take them seriously. So look, what does ready for business look like? Well, first of all, as I said, you've got to have a brief, preferably a business plan, but at least a brief. And in that, you need to be able to clearly communicate to a stranger, what does your ideal customer look like? So who is it that you're planning on selling to? What's your value proposition for that particular customer? So why will that customer buy from you instead of your competition? Then talking about things like your target market segment. Okay, so an ideal customer is one person, a buyer. Your target market segment is all of the people within that particular segment. And most importantly, why you believe there's demand in there and whether you can prove it. So again, going back to the farmer's market idea, or if you can do it online, going back to some small, low cost type of experiment, so that you can point to, here are actual sales from strangers. Here's why it happened, and here's why I think I can escalate that as a business potential. Also, it needs to outline your existing competition, how you're different, and at least some touch on the financial model, how you're going to make money, and different scenarios where you can make more money, less money, and so on. And really at that stage, if you're going out, say, to a Leo and you're looking for funding, everybody will want to know, well, at least you've addressed this, at least you've started thinking about it. If you haven't even started thinking about it, if you can't demonstrate that you've started thinking about it, nobody is going to take you seriously. And what's worse is it's more difficult to go back again later. So if you go in, If you make a fool of yourself, if you show that you don't really know what you're doing, well, then trying to go back in again 6 months later is again a little bit more difficult. So on some of the panel discussion earlier, I've heard some sources of funding already mentioned. So this is just a few more ideas. There are things, and you can Google all of these. There are some links in here as well. Things like the Back to Work Enterprise Allowance. The trading online vouchers is a small amount of money, but it can help convert an existing website into one that will allow you to trade online. I'm a big fan of business plan competitions. I think these things are really great. It's a way to force you to put down all of your thoughts and get the work into putting a business plan together. And then it can be judged by people. And I'm on a lot of judging panels for these things. But you get free money out of it. And not just that, you get good network connections, you get good mentors. Sometimes you get a lot of media visibility. I won a few of these awards myself in my early days. And probably more than the money, the actual media exposure was absolutely incredible. You suddenly find yourself on the business pages of the Irish Times, prominently featured in things like the Sunday Business Post or Business and Finance. So I recommend looking at these sort of things and seeing what competitions you can go into. And then the final stage for this presentation, the next steps, what lets you know, are you actually ready? Well, if you're not ready, on the SARAM website, I've got a resources page and you can go to that. It will help you build out things like business plans, your business canvas and so on. If you're not on Tom's entrepreneur course, there are other start your own business training courses online. I highly recommend not taking any steps until you've done at least one of them. That will give you the basics. And again, different business plans. If you are ready, I think going to your local enterprise office website, meeting with the LDC or the LEO, and most importantly, and the thing that I'd like to stress the most is try to find some low-cost experiments that you can use. Pop-up shops, farmers markets, anything that you might be able to do online. But the big thing is, as an entrepreneur, can you sell? Everything else is decoration. If you can't sell, unless you've raised huge amounts of funding like a software development company, you're just not going to make it. So you have to be able to get the revenue in the door. That is what is being an entrepreneur. A lot of it, the rest of it is decoration. So look, with that, let me wrap up. I wish you all the very best on your journey as an entrepreneur. It's certainly an exciting one, a challenging one. It will bring out the best and worst in you. Both of those things are good. So thank you, and back to Jan.
Thank you, Mike. That was really interesting. It was so pragmatic, and I hope maybe we can share the slides afterwards if you're agreeable to that.
Sure.
Yeah,
In fact,
great.
the whole video is up on YouTube, so I'll send you a link to that.
Fantastic, and we'll definitely share that far and wide, because I think for anyone starting off, an A to Z like that, really short, sharp, here's what you have to do, is so useful, because as you said at the start, it's easy to get lost in the business cards and the registration and all of that. But there's a lot of homework to be done before you even get to that stage. Just to sum up, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, and Tom for moderating the event, and Mike, of course, for sharing his knowledge and his business acumen. We really want to, at ODI, at the Open Doors Initiative, highlight self-employment as a viable pathway for many groups and many people. So we hope you found today really useful for that, and to hear other people's experience and how they've got ahead, and to know that it is an option for people if you have the right idea. Anyone looking for support should get in touch. We have a mentorship program and free online training session with Bank of Ireland on financial management and well-being, and that's on next Thursday, the 18th of November at 11 a.m. And you can register for that on www.towardswork.ie. That's it for us today. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you found it really useful. We'll have more toolkits and seminars and other information coming out in self-employment over the course of the year, and well, what's left of this year or next year. So please do link in with us and let us know what you think, let us know what you'd like to see, and we'll try and produce content that's accessible and interesting for anyone who's in this space. So with that, I'll close the seminar, and thank you so much for all your time.